Welcome to Allergy Dragon's Lair. My name is Martha Morgan. I'm a specialty diet and allergy chef, and I happen to have celiac disease as well. My biggest claim to fame is raising a child with over 30 food allergies and celiac disease. Thanks for watching or listening, whichever platform you happen to be on. But before we jump into this episode, we need to do our quick disclaimer. The views expressed here on our show are the personal opinions and life experiences of ours and our guests. We are not healthcare providers or doctors. Please seek advice from your healthcare professional for any diagnosis or changes to your healthcare plan. So I'm super excited about this episode, and I say that every time about every single one of my guests, but I really truly mean it. So this time I have got Annie Mae from Annie Mae's Sweet Cafe here in Louisville, Kentucky. This is one of my featured podcasts for Celiac Awareness Month and Allergy Awareness Week. So we wanted to really kind of focus on all the amazing things that are happening here in Louisville. So here to introduce herself and tell us a little about, her journey to making Annie Mae's Sweet Cafe is Annie Mae.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, my journey. It was a long one. Let's just put it that I was a sickly child. I didn't have parents that ignored my sickness at all. I was at all the doctors all the time. And no one ever said, hey, we think it's food allergies. We think it's celiac disease. We think it's this or that. Maybe it was the 80s. I'm not really sure. And, maybe it was the junk food boom and everyone, was getting sick at the time. I have no idea, but I actually didn't get diagnosed till I was 30. And that was even after several other health scares that would also indicate celiac disease. No one said anything. I had planned on opening a bakery when I was a little kid. It was like going to be my favorite thing ever. And while I was teaching, I was diagnosed. So I decided I just baked in my free time, fun stuff. And I decided to just start like converting my recipes to gluten-free, just did a bunch of research on everything. And my goal was to convert them so fast that I didn't forget what the texture was like of the real stuff. Because, as it goes on years and years, you're like, I don't really remember what the texture of that is supposed to be. I don't remember that. Or the worst part is there were some things that you never tried. And now you're like, is this what it's supposed to taste like? This is the gluten-free vegan version or whatever. Is it supposed to taste like this? I have no idea. Or there's foods that you have never heard of, and you try to make them gluten-free and you're like, I don't know if I'm doing this right because I have no idea what the, non-gluten-free version is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So that was my goal, just to do it as fast as I can. I mean, I would come home from work and I would bake 6 or 8 hours a night, just recipe, and try to nail them down as fast as I could. So that I was like, this is pretty close to what it used to taste like to me. And then I actually set it up where I was baking from a shared kitchen. This was in 2010. And I was renting a shared that doesn't even exist anymore. That's how long ago it was. And that was difficult too, because then I'm using a shared kitchen that other people who are not gluten-free are using, so it wasn't like super safe. I guess the response was good enough that I decided to open a retail shop. So that's how it came about, really. I had not intended at all to have food there. It was going to be just a bakery. Right? Bakery, fun stuff. And I mean, 6 months before I even opened it, people were like, are you going to have sandwiches? Are you going to have soup? Are you going to have pizza? Are you going to have this? Are you going to have that? And I was like, no. And there was so much pressure because at the time there wasn't a gluten-free place to eat. So when we opened, it was a little bit of food and baked goods. And eventually I just had to phase out the food because it was too much. It was too much for the tiny little building we're in,
That happens. And also I think, we get to a certain aspect when we open up a restaurant. I've done this before too. We think about everything that everybody wants and we don't realize what our plan or what our goal is. What do we really want to do? Is that really the path we want to be on? So,
right.
But I totally get that aspect of it. And then, so you said you have celiac disease, right?
Uh-huh.
And then you have food allergies too, or just
I have lots of different food allergies. Okay. So many. Yes.
Okay. Are you like me and my youngest? We have to carry a PDF.
I've got them all written down. I'm not quite at the PDF level. It's a lot, but I just Some of them are easy because I react to fish and shellfish as well as beef and poultry. So I'm like, I'm a vegetarian, like, so when I go out, I'm just like, is this vegetarian and gluten free? Because I basically react to all the meats. So
Okay.
I can condense it a little bit.
Well, we're sporadic. We have the fish, we do shellfish, eggs, and then all tree nuts and all the tree nuts, and then fruits and vegetables and spices. So it becomes crazy. But so yeah, we have a very big spectrum versus just not that that's easy either. I always say that it has nothing to do with one allergy is too many to have.
Right. But sometimes I'm like, oh, these people who come in the bakery and they're just gluten-free. It's so much easier now than even when I opened the bakery to find gluten-free stuff. But the multiple food allergies is still so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's still awful.
It is still very awful. I mean, you're one of the few places that we can actually get stuff for Vesper, my youngest kiddo with over 30 allergies, and that we're not so scared to oh my gosh, you can't eat there. We never got to eat there with the food and the pizza, because of garlic and stuff. But yeah, it's nice to have that. So I appreciate you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I think that I was really surprised the other day. I was not the other day, it was a few months ago, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Happened to be, I think it was at a grocery store actually, and somebody was in town visiting, and they were talking, and they knew of the Celiac Cafe, and then they were like, well, we're looking for something for breakfast or something. I said, well, what about Annie Mae's Sweet Cafe? And she was like, no, I have to have it completely dedicated gluten-free. And I was like, they are completely dedicated gluten-free and they're vegan, and I'm like, what do you mean you don't know about this place? So yeah, I'm like, okay, we still need to keep spreading the word about Annie Mae. So I was like,
yeah, there's so many people who, well, actually we're getting a lot of new people this year, which that doesn't really happen every year, but at least 3 times a week, somebody comes in and they're like, I've never been here before, and I was just diagnosed. So it's nice that people are getting proper diagnoses and things like that. That's good. Cause the early days we used to get, I'm supposed to be gluten-free because my personal trainer told me to be, and I need 10 cupcakes. And I'm like, I don't know if your personal trainer wants you to eat 10 cupcakes, whether they're gluten-free or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is hard. I think number one, I personally, as a small business owner, rely on word of mouth because it's more genuine. Mm-hmm. So I don't do tons of advertising, and word of mouth spreads a lot slower than if you're just like, here's our Facebook ad, here's our Instagram ad, here's this. But it also carries with it a lot more confidence. So people are like, you got to go there, or you got to eat here. It's very safe, this and that. So yeah, I mean, I take some responsibility for people not knowing about us, but just because I prefer the word of mouth. But you know what? Somebody, you told that person about us. So that's what I like to hear.
You have quite a few of us that are online that are spreading the word, or even just directly. And we are seeing a huge increase. My clients, I do cooking classes and that kind of thing. And yeah, I'm finding so many young people that would never, I never got diagnosed. I didn't get diagnosed until I was 33. And so it was in 2009. Mm-hmm. And so I was sick most of my life. Right. And it was just, you're fat. I was over 400 pounds plus. So I didn't present normal, traditional celiac, but I was losing teeth, had 5 miscarriages, things like that. Oh. So I was definitely, misdiagnosed. So the fact that people are getting diagnosed now much earlier is amazing to me, because they can have a better quality of life than what we had. You all opened up in June of 2011, right?
Uh-huh. And so then when I opened up, it was an interesting transition. I had never worked in food in my entire life, not even a high school food job, nothing. I mean, I was a teacher. I had done some retail before and things like that in college, but not food. So it was pretty eye-opening for me.
Lots of learning curves there, because people a lot of people think that it's just easy.
Oh, learning on the fly. What's that? What even is a hood system? What is this? And you're like, oh, okay, got it. Okay. Everything was sort of crazy, which I generally welcome into my life. I love the chaos, and I love to organize the chaos. So I do really enjoy change. So it was a huge change from just being, a teacher of kids with special needs. Here I am in a totally different. I think my teaching colleagues thought I was nuts. Like, what? You're going to leave and just open a bakery? That's weird. Because it's not even on a similar path, So that was fun though. I would say for the first 3 to 4 years we were open, people still had no idea what gluten-free even was. I mean, we still get a few people, very rarely now though, now that it's been almost 12 years. But the first 3 to 4 years, people would just walk in and be like, what is gluten-free? Is that vegan? No. Is that vegetarian? Does that mean Atkins diet? And I'm like, wow, no. And they're like, is it for people with diabetes? No. So, we had that. Plus we had the people who just constantly walked in and wanted free medical advice that I don't know. I'm like, I'm not a doctor. I just make this stuff if you need it. And I'm not sure if you remember the trends, but let's see, we opened in 2011 and by about 2013, it was a fad diet, right? Gluten-free.
Yeah. 2013 to 2015 was the big fad, yes.
And everyone needed to be gluten-free, no matter what. They had gluten-free, which was both helpful and hurtful for, celiac disease. It did increase awareness a little bit. It increased the product lines everywhere, and that was nice. But then, it also, people hated us at restaurants because we were just trying to be really careful. And the gluten-free people who were just doing it as a fad would go, oh, you can just pick the croutons off, or croutons are fine. And some of those gluten-free fad people would come into the bakery and they still had no idea how to be gluten-free. And I'm like, oh, okay. But you know what? It all works out how it works out. So I think if you had to weigh that time period, like it was more beneficial than hurtful, just because we got so many more products out of it in the grocery aisles.
Yeah. And then 2015, we got the official, them having to make sure that gluten-free is actually, somewhat restricted by the FDA for just, you can just slap gluten-free on everything.
Right.
Still not perfect with that law, but at least we had some type of mandate, because before then it was like they didn't care and they were just like gluten-free. So I do agree with you. I think on the upside, we had more ups than downs, but I still find people that just assume that gluten-free is gross, disgusting, or they don't know what the heck it is.
I find those people too. And I'm like, there's some things I've had, so I could see where you would, make that assumption. Because
me too.
If the very first thing you tried was like awful, and even all the celiac people think it's awful, I could see where someone would be like, I'm never eating gluten-free again.
I am too. And I totally have. I've tasted some really horrible things. And I'm like, okay, that's just not good. And it's like explaining to people that gluten is actually a texture. So it's more of a texture than a mouthfeel than it is. The flavors do affect it, but it's more of a texture. And so it's almost, sometimes it can be very individualized too. Like, I just do not like that texture. And I'll be like, and then I meet come look at that, love it. And you're like, oh no.
Right. Like there are things that are always gluten-free in life that I don't like the texture of already, like melons. Ugh, no, I'm not a fan. So I get that, people have texture issues. I have so many texture issues.
I hear you. It's okay. And my oldest son's on the autism spectrum, so it's even worse. And then you add into some other things. So it's like I tell people, like, if you tell me what's wrong with the product, I can make fixes. But when you have those people that are just completely negative and they can't tell you what's wrong with it, then you just didn't like it because it said gluten-free on it. Like you weren't going to like it even if it was good at this point, And I've had that feedback when we've been here locally doing some of the shows and just trying to push it out there that, there's options beyond that and we need to be represented. Everybody does.
Right.
So basically opening the first dedicated gluten-free and Top Allergen Free Bakery in Louisville, you went over like how that kind of was for you. But congratulations on surviving the pandemic. Like that's amazing.
It was the worst. Let's put it that way. I can't speak for anyone who was at home during the pandemic because I was not at home. So as someone who had to be out in public the entire time, it was like the unknown fear that everyone had of COVID. Because, some people like went, I have COVID, and some people were like, dying. So there was that like unknown fear, pressing on everyone. And as a food business, like the rules for how we could operate would change like every day. So you're like, now we can't do this. Okay. And then you try to, you try to tell the customers, like, we can't do this now. And then they like get mad and you're like, I don't know. Like, we just can't. Honestly, the worst part is we had gotten to the point where we were franchising, and that started in 2017. It was in the works for 2 years. The other location opened in Newtonville, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And I was up there for like a month in October, a little bit of November of 2019, right? Helping to open the store and all of that. They up there really got hit with the scary part of the pandemic by January. Whereas here in Kentucky, nobody even said anything about it until they were like, and you're shut down,
Yeah, it was like March, boom.
Right. It was like, oh, pandemic, stop. But up there, they had already, like, everyone was already panicking in January. So they were really only open like 6 weeks. That store was only open like 6 weeks, or maybe 8, before everybody just started panicking because they'd already had cases up there in January. They hung on until September of 2020, but they had no established regulars. They had barely been open. So we lost that immediately. And that was really sad because that was a lot of work for years and years to finally get that up and running. And I almost lost the business here just because it just became such a struggle every day. It was like I said, changing rules every day and all the supply chain. It was a larger crew in March of 2020. And I, scaled it down to like, the bare bones crew. And we really stuck together for a few months, and it just kept getting harder and harder. And it got to the point where I had taken out the EIDL loan, the disaster loan, to save everyone's jobs, right? So we're at this point where we're like, what do we do? It's either shut down or take out this massive loan. And then took out the massive loan, and I calculated, like, if we don't do well the next X amount of months, I'll run out of payroll at this time. And I warned all my employees. I was like, look, this is how much payroll it's going to cover. And if we don't, step it up, or if we don't open up like the world opened back up, like, I don't know what's going to happen. And when it hit that point, I was like, okay, we're still not doing anything. The rules are still changing every day. We're still not like open up, and everybody's curbside. Our sales are still tanking, blah, blah, blah. So I let them all go, and which was at the time awful because I had planned on just like, I was going to shut down for 2 weeks and figure out, what direction do we go in? Do I just hang out in this building and try to bake as much and decorate as much as I can by myself? Do I just not open back up ever again? Thankfully, they've all got other jobs now. Thankfully, they were like, no, it was not a good decision for anybody. It really sucked, for lack of a better word. And in those 2 weeks, even though I had explained to my wholesale customers that I would still be doing wholesale for a long time, they all panicked too and ordered a bunch of stuff. So for the entire 2 weeks that I was supposed to be shut down and thinking about how to restructure, I was just filling wholesale orders, and I did not have 1 second to think about it. So then I was just like, okay, I'll just take special orders only, and that's it. And we won't be open. And the very first reopen, like, hey, I've got a bunch of special orders, so I'm actually going to unlock the door instead of making them knock on the door, right? Got a lady in who she came in and she said, so you just don't have anything here? I'm never coming back. And wrote us a terrible review. And I'm like, I literally just opened the door for the people who had ordered. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And as it went on, the next like few weeks, few months, where I had the door open for the people who had special ordered, this is like what, spring of 2021 now, people just kept coming in and they were like, you don't have anything? You don't have anything? How do you not, And I'm like, how do I explain to them that it's just like pre-orders? So eventually I was like, okay, let me just throw whatever I have left from these orders into the case. And I did that for a while and then was like, okay, maybe we can open tiny hours. So like in the late summer of 2021, I hired a few people. We had minimal retail hours and we just sort of coasted on those minimal retail hours through the end of 2021, right?
Yeah.
It was still mostly pre-orders. So in 2022, I'm like, okay, I think we're opening up, things are starting to get back to normal. So I'll hire a bunch of people and we'll try to go like we did before. We'll just try to full steam ahead and gradually open the retail hours up so that eventually when I hire all these people, we've got regular retail hours. And it worked very well until July of 2022. And I think everything caught up with everything. The inflation, people were like, whoa,
Yeah.
I can't even afford this at the grocery store. So I'm definitely not going to a bakery.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it tanked majorly. It was just like it almost overnight. It tanked until October. And I was like, we are not going to make it. Yikes. I had to I had hired about 5 new people. I had to let them all go. And I had hired them in April. And I think by the end of maybe mid-October, end of September, I had let them all go because I was like, nobody showed up except the regulars. We have regulars who would show up, if a bomb went off outside, they'd be like, I'm here for my bread.
Right.
Which is fine. I love that. Yeah. So that was really rough because that was when inflation really killed every restaurant. And then as soon as the inflation hit and everybody started tanking, we had to start paying back our loans that we had taken out 2 years before that we were just hoping would save us and still hadn't saved us. So now we're all paying back our loans that we can't afford to pay back. That was almost worse than being shut down from COVID. Mm-hmm. Just the tanking of the sales like that.
No, I agree because you had it where you felt like you were going and it's like, okay, we're back up, we're treading. And then it's like, again, what's going on? No, it definitely very depressing. And yeah, I was in the hospital, running the hospital kitchen during COVID. So that's fun.
Right.
You really do become family with your employees and people don't understand that. Like it's very hard to go through that. I mean, it's almost like you said, I can compare like those 2 losses, going from one and over and just constantly you're like, okay, when is this going to end?
Right.
Well, we're glad that you're still open. At least we are here. Vesper was at college this past year. Like when they first got back up there in August, I came by and got like the focaccia bread, the biscuits. There was something else. And then I had to get them a pretzel too.
Right.
But there was some other stuff and I like goodie bag because like their mess hall wasn't getting them bread. Like they had no bread for almost a month. And so we were driving up there that weekend and had the care package from Annie Mae, which saved me from having to like cook all of that. It's like, I can do that, but I just don't want to sometimes. So, that's why we enjoy Annie Mae so much. So what is your favorite item that you sell?
My current favorite is vanilla cupcake. I think my favorite changes, every few months or so, but I'm on a vanilla kick right now.
Vanilla is my favorite too. So I'm also anaphylactic to chocolate. So probably part of it. So what is the item that you've sold out of like all the time that you're just really surprised of that you have to keep on hand?
Okay. So our best seller is the oatmeal cream pie and I don't get it. I do not like oatmeal. I don't like oatmeal cookies. I don't really want anything made with oatmeal ever. And not only that, but oats are so controversial with the celiacs, which we test our oats, every bag we open, we test them to make sure, but it's our best-selling item. It's our number 1 seller. We sell out of them all the time. People come in, the cookie is like this big and it's cookies with oatmeal 2 oatmeal with vanilla frosting. And they're like, I need 6 of those. And I'm like, but yeah, I don't want that cookie ever. And people are like, it's your bestseller and you don't like it. And I'm like, no, oatmeal, come on. I want fudge and I want candy and I want, something fruity. Oatmeal would be my last choice. Oatmeal. But
yeah, that's awesome because I no offense, I'm with you on the oatmeal, but my youngest loves them. Okay, my youngest
right?
adores them, and I'm like, what is the big deal about this?
Right? What is the big deal?
That was not the answer I expected, but
yeah, they love them.
Now I know you do shipping, right? So we need to kind of go over that a little bit for anybody that's listening that's out of state.
Right, we do ship all over the country. I actually have been shipping since I was delivering, since I was baking out of the shared kitchen. So I've been shipping for 12 years retail and 1 year, so 13 years of shipping. It's mostly cookies, cookie kit. The frosting is in bags. People think we're shipping, whole frosted cakes. And I'm like, no, I do not trust any third party to deliver your whole frosted cake correctly. So you can put the frosting on when you get it. We do ship cakes. We have a sampler. Like it's got 4 cookies and 2 toaster treats and 4 oatmeal cream pies in it. We also ship just the toaster treats, which we ship a ton of those. People love the toaster treats. That's probably my second favorite item.
Yeah, I know the toaster treats are definitely very popular.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have actually never ate one. I guess I should. But I will say that one of my favorite things that you all do is when you do have the lemon cookies, occasionally you'll do the lemon sandwiches and I'm not allergic to strawberries, but you'll have a strawberry icing and you put it between that cookie. And it's like one of my favorite things in the world.
Oh yeah, people love that. In the summer, all of our leftover, after I frost the cakes with the fruit frosting, we just throw them in the lemon cookies because people are obsessed.
Yes, that's what we usually end up getting. It, to each his own, and as long as it brings people in, you go for it. But yeah, you do have some really cute things. Like I know there are a couple of times we bought stuff just because it was cute, and it supports a local business, and I didn't have to do it. That's people don't understand that. So
exactly.
I'm so happy to have had you on, and I hope that you are able to keep being viable here in Louisville and shipping to other places. And I hope anybody that is listening definitely checks Annie Mae out. All the information will be down below if you're watching on YouTube and on the description if you are listening to the podcast. So definitely check them out and get their goodie boxes and that kind of thing so you can taste a whole bunch of stuff, a bunch of different things.
That's right.
So is there anything you want to add or when closing that you'd like to let everybody know or anything we didn't get to in conversation?
Just that we are a dedicated gluten-free facility. We are also Top9 free. We were sesame free before they even, declared it. So only because what am I using sesame for in my baked goods? I don't love the taste of it. So I didn't use it in anything anyway. And so everything we ship is also free of all those things. So,
and then one thing I will ask real quick to add on to that is I've seen before sometimes we'll have corn-free items.
Yes. So I am super allergic to corn, and we switched to corn-free powdered sugar in 2021 just because when I was making the frosting, I just had hives. So
it's not fun. It's not fun.
It blows back in your face from the mixer. So once we switch to the corn-free powdered sugar, really all that's left that has corn in it at the bakery is stuff with food dyes and sprinkles and things like that. So that's been super helpful because we did see a lot of increasing corn allergies coming in, and they're like, what's corn-free? And it used to just be the cookies and a ganache cupcake. And now people get frosting. What you want.
That is true. It's awesome. I have a lot of clients that are corn-free as well. And so that I always notice those things when I say, no, of course, everything you've talked about, I'm like, yeah, I know I've been here living with you, but not everybody knows your story. And right. I think everybody's story is important. That's why we do Allergy Dragons Lair to kind of prove to everybody that, we're all part of this community, but we're so much more than our food allergies and our intolerances. Mm-hmm. So, well, thank you again for being part of Louisville, Kentucky, and just being part of Annie Mae's and being who you are and doing what you're doing. So
you're welcome.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and having to deal with Zoom for the first time. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, then, well, I guess we're done with this episode. Subscribe and ring the bell and comment away. Okay, then we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.